Powered by Go-Goat Sports in partnership with TSN. This is Season 4, Episode 56 of the Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. We've got Jeff O'Neill from TSN from Overdrive, former NHLer, current analyst with us. He's going to stop by, and it's always a good time, Ray, isn't it? With the O-Dog, talk about his life, the Leafs, everything.
There's always something with O. Right? Like it's just, I don't even know what it is, but there's always something. So look forward to seeing him again. I really enjoy working with O.
Yeah, so purposely have got the golf attire, which is supplied by our good friend Mitch Dawson, right? So, I've got the FootJoy hat on. I've got the shirt. Not golfing today. Tomorrow will be my first round.
Have you tried the new shoes? Have you tried the new shoes?
I have not.
Oh, slippers, man.
Oh, no kidding.
So comfortable. So good.
Heading out to Royal Ashburn, which is the course nearby me. I'm a member there, so looking forward to round one. Lot going on, so let's get right to it in headlines. And obviously we'll take a look at what we know, and that's mostly the teams who aren't in the playoffs, because we're recording this episode 56 on Thursday. Not all of the matchups. In fact, most of them haven't been determined yet. But what will lead our headline portion in episode 56 is Kyle Davidson, general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks, issuing a statement today, Ray. I'll paraphrase, just simply saying that through a variety of conversations with their captain, Jonathan Toews, the Hawks as an organization have decided that they will not be extending Jonathan Toews into the future. So Jonathan Toews will play his final game tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers. And Davidson goes on to say that, look, they wanted to make sure that they make this announcement now so that the fans in Chicago can acknowledge a great champion in this city in an appropriate way. It's a little bit jarring when you read it, right? That they've decided as an organization they're not going to offer him an extension. But then it also kind of feels like the right thing to do, Ray.
I do believe so. It feels like the chapter's over there, and I think just when you say that, it's always easy to second guess and to nitpick things, and I think I would have liked, if they were going to do this, to have that night maybe a little bit more in advance.
Right.
They, next Thursday is going to be Jonathan's last game. Join us at the United Center to celebrate his time with the Blackhawks, like something like that. But yeah. I do think I do like the thought that, he's just not going to go into the off season and just vanish from the Blackhawks. I do like that. Yeah. And I think it's a nice thing to do by the Blackhawks.
Yeah, and we talked about it on Tuesday in episode 55 about, okay, well, this now frees Toews to make his decision. Does the body feel strong enough? Is he mentally engaged enough to go through everything you have to go through at that age to prepare yourself to play next year? And if so, then, potentially there will be contenders out there who are looking for his level of experience. So, interesting twist. Okay, Pittsburgh Penguins, speaking of other iconic players, eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs, and a little bit different than Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals, for me anyway. I'm not putting words in your mouth. But doesn't it seem strange we're not going to see Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang in round one of the playoffs?
It's a decade and a half.
Yeah.
They've been in it every year. Like, it's a pretty remarkable thing. The way that the Penguins went from Lemieux to Crosby, a miss, and then all of a sudden they've been in the playoffs, and playoffs start, they're in. It has felt like, they were kind of gradually coming to this point.
Yeah.
And I've made this comparison before, but the Penguins really feel like the Red Wings right at the end of their 25-year playoff run.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Red Wings, since they missed, they haven't been back. They haven't been back to the playoffs since that day. Mm-hmm. So I think they've got some real issues in Pittsburgh that reared their head this year.
Yeah.
They're not quick enough. They're not skilled enough. They've got some contracts that are going to be really hard to work their roster around. It really feels like the end of an era in Pittsburgh. It really does. I don't think that's an overreaction because they missed 1 year. I just really feel like it's going to be tough to turn that boat around again.
I agree. And maybe in episode 57 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, we're talking about some of the front office changes in Pittsburgh that have already taken place with Hextall, maybe Brian Burke. But you mentioned speed and skill. How do you, to your point, that's not an easy fix. I mean, those are fundamental areas of concern. So is this the slide that we should expect the Penguins to go on now, right? If not a rebuild, then certainly a renovation for the next few years.
Well, as with any team, with players of the caliber at the top of their roster, like you're never going to be bad enough to rebuild.
No, it's hard. Yeah.
And because they're not going to, it's not like Sidney Crosby's going to get 7 goals next year and Malkin's going to get 25 points. But their chance to do this was last summer. And, you know, I think their desired path was to go into a renovation of some sort. It was pretty close to a rebuild, but there was fan surveys and ownership and management meetings about it, and that ended up with a 4-year. Remember, it was right down to the wire. It was right before the free agent period that Malkin signed, and you know, like that chance is gone, and so now you have to wait out these contracts to see what you can get out of them, but also what can you bring in, like what can you fit in the cap to help them be better. Right. Like, what is it? How much is it? They're going to do something about a goalie. Like that's. I don't see a scenario where Tristan Jarry's back. I do wonder if the next thing we're going to hear out of Pittsburgh is a complete reshuffling of everything, of the front office, of the management. I wonder if that's the first thing we hear.
Yeah. Crosby retire a Penguin?
Interesting.
I know. Well, you have to think about it, but I remember mentioning this a year plus ago, right? Because honestly, because of what you just said, the direction of the organization, were they embracing a renovation, all of those things, it was conceivable. There were discussions about whether or not they consider to do what the fan base would consider to be unthinkable. But
I don't know why.
Chase another cup? I don't know.
It's too cheesy to think this, but isn't there a way that you go, geez, wouldn't him and Nate McKinnon be fun to watch on the same team?
Oh, boy.
But then when I say that, I'm like, well, that's just fantasy, because is Sid going to play anytime soon for $1 million?
No.
Forever, he's been the most underpaid guy in the game.
Forever. Yes. Yeah.
And Pittsburgh's lucky. They are. I hope the people there understand that, when they talk about Crosby, of all the commitment and dedication he's given to the Penguins, but he's also left buckets of money on the table that's allowed them to stay competitive for years. It really has. And while all that stuff is maybe out in the ether, I think it needs to be acknowledged as to what he's done there.
Okay, we've got Jeff O'Neill coming up on the podcast, so that'll look after the Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning series. So before we dive into what'll be wild in the West and the permutations, all kinds of scenarios to unfold with Game 82 about to be played, if you're the Florida Panthers, Ray, does it matter at this point? I mean, are you hoping to avoid the Boston Bruins? But if that's the case, then it's maybe New Jersey. Is it Carolina? Or are you just, you're riding the momentum. You're riding the wave of going through a tough year and locking down a playoff spot. So whoever it is, let's just hit them head on.
I think it's dangerous to try and prefer somebody
Yeah.
because you might get them and they might run the steamroller right over top of you.
Right.
I I think you can, there's some years you look and you go, man, I'd rather play them than them. Like
Yeah.
there's some years where the difference between the teams is really great. I think in almost all cases, it's it's really a toss up.
Yeah.
It really is. So when we were, I'm going to say this, like, do you know one of my favorite coaches is to talk to is Jared Bednar. And
Underrated, by the way. I know he's a Stanley Cup champion head coach, but we talked about this the other day. I think he's underrated as coaches go in the NHL.
He's just so stable and solid.
Yeah.
And he's really honest. And so we were asking him, because we did that Oilers game the other day and with them, and asking just about what you were talking about. And just the way he answered it, and about the reason you don't look for one team or the other, and you finish where you finish, and then you look at what's there.
Yeah.
By the way, if Colorado and Edmonton play again, and if I get to do that series, I will guarantee you we will run it. It's called a 2-box, so split screen of Jared Bednar behind the bench during play and Jay Woodcroft behind the bench.
Okay.
Jared stands there. I'm telling you, his hands are in his pocket. He does not move. He'll maybe walk a few steps to the left, a few steps to the right. He's always
in control.
Really. Jay is the most animated coach behind the bench. He's always fixing his jacket and he's moving it up and down. And he'll put a foot up on the bench. Sometimes he loses his balance and bounces off the back of the bench. And he's reaching and touching, you're up. And the difference in the energy between the two guys is phenomenal. And I got to say this, because we had this stat the other night. Only Tom Johnson, who coached the Bruins for a small period of time, had a better winning percentage after 100 games in his career than Jay Woodcroft in the history of the game.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable.
So as you're describing the two scenarios there and the differences between Woodcroft and Bednar theatrically on the bench, I'm thinking to myself, if Woodcroft was behind Nate McKinnon, you think Nate McKinnon would have a problem turning around and saying, "Would you just stop that? Stop it."
The one way to get away from it, I was thinking, because I was watching that and I'm like, he's all over the place back there. It's just like his nervous energy, but he's also he's not when he's calling players up, he goes right down and taps them on the shoulder.
Yeah.
But if you stay at the end of the bench, he can't get down there.
Right.
And I think that might be my place.
That's awesome. You mentioned the Oilers. Okay, talk about a team, to steal the word from Jack Hughes, on a hater, right? Going into tonight, they've won 8 in a row, 17-2-1 in their last 20. There's just a different feel about this team now, isn't it? A year ago they did great. They made it to the conference final. That's hard to do in the National Hockey League. But, with the ads from Kenny Holland and everything and how the pieces now fit into that puzzle, I'm not sure if I'm in the team in the West, I want anything to do with the Oilers based on how well they've played.
They've been phenomenal. Going back to, I think it's January 11th, they're the best team in the league.
Yeah.
And we focus, of course, on all the history making of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl quietly, if you can, get to 120 points. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is over 100, and their power play is a historical success. But the fact that they can keep the puck out of their net is really something. Now, did you vote on the awards, Dregs?
I do. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at my ballot for Rookie of the Year, and I'm stuck. I think a lot of people feel it's Matty Beniers in a runaway. I'm stuck with Stu Skinner too. What Skinner's done in the Oilers net is remarkable. Like, you talk about the impact on a team and what Skinner has done in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is remarkable. His numbers are top shelf. All the Oilers goalie has to do right now is not drive the train off the track.
Right.
If they can keep it below 3 goals, I think they've got a chance every night.
Yeah.
And he's done that. But he's done it by a large margin. Their goals against, I want to say, Dregs, in their last 6 games, they've given up 4 goals against. So here's the other thing to that, though, about wanting to play them.
Yeah.
You're not going to go unbeaten for the rest of the year. You're going to lose a game, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Seems like pretty logical. What if you lose game 1 of the playoffs? Uh-oh. Edmonton will be patient.
Yeah.
Like the panic will set in, and that's going to be the moment where, like, the leaders, McDavid and Draisaitl in particular, just go, that's all right. We've been here before. Because you are going to lose a game. Somewhere you're going to lose a game. And I think they're a really good team. They're big. How about, now I know it doesn't matter as much as it used to, but plus minus, Matthias Ekholm's plus 26.
I know.
Since he went to Edmonton. He was plus 6 the other night. You know what? I'll give you somebody, I forget who it was on the Oilers, was -1 in that 6-1 win in San Jose. And the reason I tell that story is we won a game in Quebec City one night, the Islanders. We won 7-2.
Yeah.
And Tom Fitzgerald and I were -2. That's hard to do.
That's hard to do.
Everyone else is hooting and hollering after the game, and we're sitting there like someone's run over our dog. Just brutal.
All right, let's wrap up headlines with a bit of fun in Alberta. And man, do the Calgary Flames and that fan base need it. I mean, they close out with a 3-1 win over the San Jose Sharks. Hilarious for me is Nikita Zadorov gets the hat trick, scores all 3 goals, including the empty netter. And then Daryl Sutter, after the game, actually showing a little bit of humor as well, saying, geez, I wish he'd have done that back in October. Talk about I shouldn't call him a hero, but an unlikely source of pure offense in Zadorov in leading with his first career hat trick.
Well, towards the end of the year, I think, odd things happen when teams are out. Mainly because guys play a little bit different. You're a little bit looser. If you make a mistake, you don't quite feel the tension as much as you might on another time. For a guy like that to get 3 goals, sends a charge through the room.
For sure it would.
When he gets his second one, and now he's probably starting to sniff around. I didn't watch the game, but I can guarantee he was probably sniffing around like, oh, wait a minute, I got 2. This is hilarious. And just the way he reacted. Yeah. They do need some fun, because we talked about the Penguins in the East. Calgary's the same in the West.
Right.
Like that whole group isn't coming back.
No. And we've talked enough about the Calgary Flames, and we'll do the unpacking.
I was just going to say that'll come in time, but they're like Pittsburgh and Calgary to me are very similar.
Good stuff. Episode 57, we will take a deeper dive into the matchups, each series of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Those are your headlines. Our interviews on Ray and Dregs this year brought to you by Canadian Club Whiskey, who are asking, are you over beer? Try a refreshing CC ginger ale with lime next time you're having a drink or watching a game.